Let's talk about a very important Supreme Court order. In the view of increasing rabies deaths in the country, the Supreme Court has ordered that all stray dogs be removed from residential localities and the streets of Delhi NCR. But this order has polarized people. Some are supporting it, but many are opposing it. I'm joined by my colleague Ashmit, who very closely tracks the judiciary in the country. And let's understand the questions that have emerged after the Supreme Court order. Ashmit, thank you for joining us. The first and the foremost question: what is the reason behind such a strong Supreme Court order?
Well, there's been reportage in the media recently which has caused some concern in the minds of the judges of the Supreme Court. The reportage to the basically indicating that there's a spread of rabies, there are incidents of stray dog biting, and that is leading to a rabies outbreak, and that is something that the court felt the need to come into play to address the issue. So it decided to take on this issue suo moto. Today was the second hearing, and just in the second hearing, we've had a sweeping order coming in from the Supreme Court. Sweeping, and I use that word quite responsibly, given as how the Supreme Court heard the counsel for the Delhi government. The Supreme Court heard the amicus in this matter, but no one else. There were applications that had been made by various animal rights activists, people who wanted to ensure that the modalities of it are not in a way where the stray dog population is bearing the brunt, to essentially build in some safeguards to allow for this order to be more measured in the direction in which it's headed. However, the Supreme Court said that now is the time for action, that this is the time which in fact there is no room for sentiment, there is no room for compromise, and with that the Supreme Court issued that sweeping direction asking for all stray dogs to be wound up. The broad long and short of the message that the Supreme Court is looking to send out is, we don't want stray dogs in Delhi NCR. That's the message that the Supreme Court is looking to drive home. So to that end, giving a sweeping direction, round up all the stray dogs, but where will they go? That's in fact where some of these questions begin to get raised as to how will this order be implemented. So a number of questions that still need answering.
Yes, a number of questions. So the first question, just to clarify, this order is only applicable to Delhi NCR, right, and not the entire country?
Well, specifically, if you look at the order, the way it's been given out today by the Apex Court, it's applicable to Delhi, to Gurugram, and to Noida. This is the immediate region. The immediate impact will be felt here. That's what the Apex Court has spelled out as a part of its order. So in terms of application of this order, this is where the impact will be felt. It is not going to be applicable, let's say, for our viewers, somebody watching out of Mumbai, not applicable. Somebody watching out of Kolkata, Bengaluru, Kochi, not happening there as of right now. At least the breadth of this order, at least so far, while it's sweeping in nature, the nature of directions that have come, the impact of it will be felt only in Delhi, Gurugram and Noida. That's the breadth of the order, the way it has been spelled out by the Apex Court, Justice Pardiwala.
Right. Another important question that's emerged, Ashmit, is that since you mentioned that the stray dogs will be rounded up, so can force be used to round them up, and where will they be taken? Do you think Delhi or NCR has that kind of infrastructure to take the number of stray dogs that are there in the national capital and the region?
I'll answer that question in two parts. First, you asked about the use of force, and interesting that this did come up as a part of today's hearing, and in response, Justice Pardiwala, who's heading this bench, he cited an old dialogue from a Hollywood classic, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And the dialogue that he cited was, when there's a time to shoot, don't talk. So clearly the message that the Supreme Court is sending out, and this is also recorded as a part of this order where the Supreme Court says that a force, if required, can be deployed. There is no room for sentiment. There is no room for compromise. Clearly, the indication is that the Supreme Court doesn't want any fetters on the municipal authorities while they're going about rounding up these dogs. So clearly, there were in fact appeals made as a part of these proceedings to build in some safeguards. In fact, at one point, one of the lawyers, Senior Advocate Siddharth Luthra, who was appearing in this matter, had asked for a distinction that at the very least, let's say the Supreme Court needs to clarify that this will not be applicable on pet dogs. That is also something that the Supreme Court has not given as a part of its order. The Supreme Court, the rationale, and this is by design, this is not by accident, the Supreme Court did not clarify on pets because the fear that's operating in the minds of Justice Pardiwala, who's heading this bench, is essentially that pet lovers, that animal lovers will simply adopt the stray dogs and therefore not allow for them to be rounded up by the municipal authorities. So even that important clarification that this is applicable only on stray dogs and not on pets, that is also another clarification that has not been given by the Supreme Court. As to where will they be taken? Well, let's bring the numbers into play. Estimates peg the number of stray dogs in Delhi NCR in the lakhs. The direction that has come from the Supreme Court is to set up animal shelters. For the first six to 8 months, the shelters need to be set up for a maximum capacity of 5,000 dogs. So, assuming there are, let's say, 10,000 dogs that are rounded up, even if these orders are implemented and there are dog pounds and dog shelters that are set up for 5,000 stray dogs, where will the remaining 5,000 go? These are questions which have not found mention in the order, which is not giving clarity on how these dogs are to be rehabilitated. So that direction the Supreme Court has not given, but at the same time has given fetorless powers, at least to the municipal authorities, to go ahead and to implement these orders in terms of rounding up the stray dogs.
Right. Another important question that's come to fore, Ashmit, is what happens to the dog lovers or animal rights activists who might intervene and say protect the dogs from the kind of treatment that might be meted out to them? In that case, what happens if they were to protect dogs from being, from force being used on them?
Well, the Supreme Court is quite clear, sticking to its guns when it says when it's time to shoot, don't talk, and it's putting that into action. And this time, as a part of the formal order itself, the Supreme Court has spelled out on 3 separate occasions. These are not observations, but these are actual parts of the order that was dictated today in the courtroom, which is implementable. There are 3 occasions that the Supreme Court has spelled out that anyone found interrupting with the municipal authorities, anyone creating a hindrance. And when the court says anyone, it means individuals or even organizations that seek to create any disturbance or hinder in this process of rounding up the dogs. As the municipal authorities come to your residential area and they try to round up these dogs, any attempt to disrupt them, to disrupt these efforts, to cause any hindrance, will invite the strictest action from the court. In fact, the court spelling it out very clearly that any individual or organization found interrupting or hindering such efforts will be liable for facing contempt of court action. And the Supreme Court trying to make it clear that it's not mincing words, spelling it out on 3 separate occasions as a part of the same order, that any effort to interrupt will translate into contempt of court action by the highest court of the country.
Right. Ashmit, if you could also help us understand what legal options do animal lovers or dog lovers have at this point in time? Because a lot of people are saying that it's very cruel to subject stray dogs to this kind of treatment. So what legal recourse can they take from this point?
Well, at this point, let's also spell out the current legal regime. The current legal regime when it comes to feeding of stray dogs, when it comes to relocation of stray dogs, is governed largely by the Animal Birth Control Rules, otherwise called the ABC rules. These rules were notified in 2023 under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. As far as these rules are concerned, they're very clear that the RWA, your RWA, needs to provide a spot for feeding these stray dogs. It clearly provides that even in case for sterilization, if they're picked up by the municipal authorities, they need to be sent back to the same area. It very clearly provides, it is silent on the question of just broad sword lifting of lakhs and lakhs of stray dog population and just throwing them outside the city limits. It is silent on that. It does not provide for any such measures. So that is the legal regime the way it currently stands. Having said that, this is a direction that has come from the highest court of the country. So there is no appeals process. There is no higher court you could go to seek a review of this order or to seek a modification of this order. But having said that, this is a matter, this order is not final in nature. This is an interim order that the Supreme Court has given. There will be another hearing in 6 to 8 weeks' time. That's when the Supreme Court will see and review the assessment, will try to assess how this order has been implemented. So we spoke to a few lawyers. What they're saying is that there is room available for filing a modification application where you move an application before the same bench, where you say that some orders, some parts of this order cannot be implemented. There are logistical hurdles in implementing them. There are concerns on humanity grounds that come up that perhaps need to be considered. That is an option that can be considered. There are some animal rights activists who are also considering filing of intervention applications. But how successful will that be? Well, that's another question to be asked, because bear in mind that it's not that these intervention applications were not present in today's proceedings. They were there, their advocates were there, but the words that the Supreme Court spelled out is that it is the time for action. It does not want any compromise. It does not want, in the court's words, listen to so-called animal lovers. The court said that this is no time for sentiment, that whatever love an animal lover might have for stray dogs, it cannot compensate for loss of life on account of spread of rabies. And with that message, the Supreme Court broadsword just refused to hear any intervention applications, refused to hear any lawyer outside of the amicus or the Delhi Government Council. So yes, there are options for filing of applications. How successful will that be? Well, that only time will tell when the next hearing does come up in about 8 weeks' time.
Right, this was really helpful, Ashmit, and what we'll do is we'll continue to track this case and the developments in the case as far as stray dogs in Delhi NCR are concerned. We've completely run out of time, but we will keep coming back to you as far as updates are concerned. Thank you for joining us.